Okay. Couple of things. There is a volunteer fair next week on Tuesday and Wednesday. So if you're interested in volunteering or just finding out about agencies in the community, it'll be in the Student Center from 10 to 2. A couple of notes. I will post most of the information that you need on Avenue to Learn, and so you should check that. Okay, what's funny? Sorry? Yeah, it's not that obvious. So check Avenue to Learn in the news that's posted before you email me. If you email me asking for information that you can look up yourself, I just don't answer the email. I have this week because I know it's the first week and you're starting, but after this week, if you can find it yourself, I won't answer the email. A couple of people came up and asked me things while I was trying to set up, and I didn't mean to be rude, but I can't do two things at once. So I probably didn't answer you properly because I was late and trying to set up. So if you need to ask me a question, I would suggest if I'm here really early and it looks like I'm already set up, then come and ask me. If I'm trying to get the projector to work, etc., then it's not a good time. Ask me at the break or at the end of class. Any questions from last week? Yes? I don't have the pictures, but I can explain it. So, who is going to tutorial tonight? And why are you going tonight? How many of you are A's? Okay, not as many hands went up when I asked if you were A's as went up when I asked if you were going to tutorial. So some of you aren't going to tutorial tonight. You have to be in the A category. So if you're an A, 1A, 2A, 3A, then you go tonight. And I'll be listing the rooms at the end of the lecture. If you're a B, when do you go? Next week. How many of you are B's? Okay, and if you're a C, when do you go? On the third week. And then what happens after that? You got it. If you do not, okay. I'll wait till you work it out. If you do not have a tutorial assigned, if you want to know what your tutorial is, you look under the Groups button on Avenue to Learn. If you do not have a tutorial assigned, please email me. It probably means that you were added to the class late. Okay? Yes? Tuesday and Wednesday next week, 2 days. Yep. Yes. It should be in titles. You know what? Don't go line up for 4 hours again to get it. Wait till things calm down. But it should be in titles. Yeah. It was ordered when the other book was ordered. Okay? Any other questions? Yes. No, the tutorials do not start at 8. The reason that it says it starts at 8 is because you cannot book a room from 8:30 to 10. You have to book it from 8 to 10. Don't ask me why, it's a registrar rule. So we had to book the rooms from 8 to 10 in order to get them at 8:30. So the tutorials will be at 8:30. Any other questions? All those people who thought they got to deke out tonight at 8 o'clock, I'm sorry. So this is the base lecture for everything we're going to talk about. These are the key concepts that you need to understand. So, why do we have social problems? So I want to ask you, and I want to give you just a few minutes to talk to the people around you about what would a socially just Canada look like. So, go. 2 minutes. Person beside you. If you don't have a person beside you, turn around. You can talk to more than one person if you want. Okay. Just to remind you, if you could leave the end seats open for people who come late, it will make things a lot easier. Also, I will warn you that the next time I ask you to discuss something, that if you are sitting there and you're not talking to somebody, I will come up and talk to you. I don't know how scary a threat that is, but I'm just telling you. So, what would a socially just Canada look like? Yes?
Free food, water, shelter, education.
So, free food, shelter, water, and education for everybody. Okay. Who would have to pay for that? So we would all pay for it and we would all get it. Okay. Yes? Sorry. Go ahead. Okay. No discrimination. I'm just going to go like this and you can decide which one of you I'm pointing at. Equal opportunities? What kind of equal opportunities? Okay. Over here.
I don't think it'd be possible unless they're all the same race or religion.
Why?
Because I think there's too much discrimination, and people I just don't think race people should be accept everyone. They all really think.
So, okay, let's hold that because what we're talking about is what it would look like, not whether it's possible. So let's just assume it's possible because I know there's lots of issues with whether it's possible or not. So let's hold that piece. Yep, back there. Yes. Yes, you've had your hand up quite a few times, yeah.
I think that there needs to be improvement in the social welfare system. Maybe it's easier for people living on disability or welfare not below the poverty line.
Okay, so that would, if that was true, would we have a socially just world or would we be working towards a socially just world? Okay. Yes. Yep.
There would be like equality in the home. You would see husbands and wives
I think working together. I don't know if you can ever expect everybody to get along. So would a socially just world be a world where everybody agreed all the time?
No, but potentially work through it in a sensible way if they have to.
Okay, so they'd work through it in a sensible way. Maybe everybody would learn the skills to do such things. Yeah. Yes, at the back.
Pretty much a communist utopia.
Well, I think there's been some issues working through that whole concept historically.
An ideal communist utopia.
I think there's lots of aspects of communist theory that, yes, would come into play. The problem is people argue about what the ideal communist utopia is. It isn't like there's just one. That's one of the issues. Anybody else? Yes? There would be or there wouldn't be? There would be. Yes, I agree. So people would talk about things. Yep. Okay, so shelter, not necessarily, would you see it as free? Is that how people would access it? Would it be free? Would shelter be free? Okay. Anything else? Oh, yes, somebody has it. You are very, I have to let you speak.
It wouldn't be a monetary-based society, it would be resource-based. People would work just for the satisfaction of working and not for monetary gain.
Sounds a lot like the communist utopia thing.
Like money that comes between people, we then through thousands of years, we've realized that.
So the system of distributing resources and creating resources might look very different. Anything else? So Robert Mullally defines a socially just society and says that one can be evaluated to the degree that it contains and supports the institutional conditions necessary for the promotion of universal value, that everyone is of intrinsic equal worth. So I think a lot of the things that you mentioned flow from the idea that everybody is equally valuable, that everyone is equally worthy. I think it's also important that he talks about institutional conditions, because I think it's impossible or almost impossible to be socially just on an individual level when you live in a structured society that is not socially just. Makes it very difficult. These slides are available on Avenue to Learn. And one of the things that you might do, because next week I'll start doing this, is I'll post the slides the night before the class, and you can download them and write notes on them. Then you don't have to write what's on the slide. So why don't we have a socially just world? I'm going to give you another 2 minutes to talk about that. Oh, you guys cheated. Okay. Hello, everyone. I really like that rule I just made up. It was quite fun. Walking out into the class and people going, I'm talking now. Don't look at me. I'm talking. Don't talk to me. So what did you come up with? Yes, at the back. Mm-hmm. Yes. With 475 people, I cannot learn your names, and so I just sort of have to point and hope you think that yes. And you went like this, and I said yes. Say whatever you're going to say. Okay, and?
Basically, everyone's too busy trying to be a leader and no one can be a follower. So what they're doing is everyone's becoming too stubborn and opinionated with anyone else and what they believe in.
Okay, what else? Yes.
Greed and perception on the world that's easy.
Okay, and beside you? Same thing? Yep, back there.
I would say the government.
Why?
They tend to dictate where what money is going into what services, and you can access those. So you don't have the public sector, you have private.
Don't we vote for them?
Do we necessarily get who we vote for?
That's true sometimes. Yep, there.
Lack of education.
Okay, yeah.
Basically, the government answer, because of hierarchies, it embodies certain powers that not other people have.
Okay.
Representative democracies.
Yes.
People aren't naturally equal, so it's got people like who are kind of, up higher than others, and going to seek to be higher than others. So,
I will address that. Yes.
Money and power.
Money and power? Money and power all by itself?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I would say by, for instance, in Canada, we had a lot of laws that were in place that purposely debilitated other people, and some of those have not been totally amended. Like, there are still remnants of, for example, Aboriginal rights haven't been totally amended. Women aren't completely, totally legal, especially totally equal, especially Aboriginal women under the law. We need to go back through our own history and our own history of inequality and make sure those things are totally amended at our constitutional level before we can actually trickle that down to the private level, to the personal level.
Okay. What about others? Yes. So, how many of you would identify yourselves as that greedy person? Interesting. Okay, now let me ask you a particular question. Why do you think you have the right to be greedy? Just wondering. Yes.
I'd say to increase your self-esteem.
So, okay, let me follow this through. You're allowed to be greedy because it will increase your self-esteem and confidence. Okay, now my question is, why is your self-esteem, and please, if I'm centering you out in a discussion, don't take it personally. I think this is an important question that lots of people are thinking, or either want to ask but don't. But so my question is, why is your self-esteem more important than somebody else's? It is a good question, isn't it? Good answer. Yeah, over there. Yes.
I don't think my self-esteem or my, I mean, it's like more important than like anyone else's. Like, I just think by nature we just look out for ourselves before we look out for other people. But I don't think I have the right to. I just think that's how we all are by nature.
What she said.
Actually, there are anthropological and archaeological studies that show that one of the reasons that humans developed and grew on this earth is because they cooperated and because they cared about others. It's actually altruism that advanced us as a creature. I think it's interesting how embedded the idea of greed as a piece of human nature, how embedded that is in people. That actually wasn't something I expected. Yeah, one last comment and then we'll move on. Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure it's like a piece of human nature, like from way back when, but I feel like it's something that we almost kind of like accidentally learn, like being in a society where like consumerism is so like prevalent, because like just by watching TV, just by being around like certain groups of friends, you're just sort of taught to want and to naturally fulfill that want with having. And I feel like that sort of makes greed.
Okay. Well, we'll talk about these things more. And I think that there's some validity to the fact that, yeah, people want things. But that can be balanced by other things. What I really want is a brand new silver BMW. I've wanted that since I was 17. Because I babysat for someone who had a BMW. They're nice cars. But I don't have a BMW. Why do you think I don't have a BMW? Yep. And why don't I have the monetary means? Yes. What do you think I spent my money on? Sorry? My children. So something balanced that want. Somebody else's wants balanced that want. Not to mention, I feel, as a social activist, it really wouldn't be appropriate for me to drive around in a BMW as much as I want a BMW. I feel bad that I drive at all, but so you can make choices. You may have wants. There's lots of things I want. There's this muffin tin in the shape of dinosaurs. It's really cool. But how important is that? Really? It's really cool, but how important is it? I would argue that a lot of what gets in the way of a socially just world is oppression. And when you're talking about oppression, and this is from the glossary, it refers to the inhuman or degrading treatment of individuals or groups brought about by the dominance of one group over another. It is a process through which individuals or groups unjustly use their power to limit the lives, experiences, and opportunities of others with less power. What this means is, in order to meet the needs of your greed, somebody else has to pay. And oppression gives you the permission and the opportunity to make them pay for what you want. And I think you're right. People want access to resources. And they want access to resources, what they want, when they want it. As much as possible, many people. But I think we have a whole social structure that justifies that relationship. And that allows people to limit the lives of others so that they can have things. Now, I'm not saying that oppression, the question is, why do we have social problems? I'm not saying that oppression is the only reason we have social problems. I definitely believe in individual choices. But many people's choices are very limited. So some people have a lot of choices, and some people have very few. Okay, who is making that noise? Make it go away, please. I love this picture. Can everybody see it? So oppression is possible because people have power. And then they use that power through systems of oppression to maintain and build on that power. So the question is, how does the top bird get to the top? And I think we also have the belief in our society that people get to the top through their own hard work because they're better than other people. That's called meritocracy. I think that lots of people at the top have worked really hard. I'm not saying that people get to the top and they're lazy or they don't know what they're doing. Sometimes that's true. But lots of people who are at the top have worked very hard. But my point is, the people at the bottom are working really hard too, but they don't manage to get to the top. There are people at the bottom who are just as smart as the people at the top, who are just as talented as the people at the top, but they're not at the top. So why does that happen? And then once you have somebody on the top, exactly why are they allowed to poop on everybody else? What are the rules that let that happen? And what keeps the birds on the bottom from going up and pecking the heck out of the bird at the top and just throwing them off the top of the perch and sitting there themselves? And I think this is a really vivid illustration of both hierarchy and oppression. So does everybody know what hierarchy is? Yes? No? How many people know what hierarchy is? How many people would like a further explanation? You know, but you'd like to know more. Okay, there's a hierarchy happening right now. Tell me what it is. Yep, at the back. Whichever me wants to go first.
You are at the top and we're at the bottom.
Well, you're not at the bottom.
Close to the bottom.
You feel close to the bottom, right?
Power, because you're a pro.
What power do I have? Great. Oh, I have the microphone. Yeah, I do. What else? Somebody said it. Grades. Oh, I decide what grade you get. But why am I at the front? Yep. Yes. I know more about some stuff than you do. But I bet every person in this room knows more about something than I do. What do you think you know more about than I do? I'm going to do this with my tutorial too. Somebody in this room knows something about something more than I do. Yes. Soccer. Yeah, probably. What else do you know more about? Yep. Pole vault. Oh, definitely pole vaulting. I'm not tall enough. Yeah. So the language you speak, which I probably don't. Well, since I only speak English and this much French and this much Spanish, it's a good guess. What else? Yep. Yes, I could do small town versus big town Canada, but not Mexico. So there are experts on all kinds of things in this room, but your expertise is not likely to be validated. My expertise has been validated by a particular process. I have particular letters behind my name. I had to go through a particular number of classes and jump through a million hoops, believe me, to get those letters behind my name so that people would let me stand up in front of you. And I'm not saying that I don't know a lot. I do. But I don't know everything. But I do have power over you. So, and you're used to that. It's not like you're all going to walk out of the class, because what would happen if you walked out of the class? So it's socially structured that you will both accept the hierarchy and that you are, to a certain extent, coerced into this hierarchy, as I am. I don't particularly believe in grades, but I work in a system that uses grades. Yep, you wanted to say something at the back? Yes, you are. Yep. Yes. And I'm not sure I caught all of that, but it sounded really smart. I have a hearing difficulty, and the first half of it I think I heard, and it sounded really good, so I just agree with the second half of it. Did most people hear what she said? Okay. If you could either say it louder or move closer to tell me. Yes. Yes, I agree. So what she was saying is that it is an oligarchy, which means that it's a hierarchy that's peopled by more than one person, that there are groups of people at the top, but that it's like a pyramid. It's like this little pole, only there's lots of birds at the top pooping on everybody else instead of just one. And that we're trained, the other thing that you said, is that we're trained from a very young age to obey authority and to work in hierarchies. And we have difficulty when we move into organizations that don't have clear hierarchical boundaries. I'm not saying I know the answer to this problem, I'm just pointing it out to you. And that this is one of the ways, if you even just look at the hierarchy within this room, you can see how structural oppression works, how your lives are structured in particular ways with certain kinds of power both over you, and you have certain kinds of power as well. What oppression does and what hierarchies provide is a certain kind of privilege. And this is a picture of a knapsack, and it's based on Peggy McIntosh's The Invisible Knapsack of White Privilege. And what she argues is that people who are defined as white in our society walk around with a set of privileges that we don't even know about, that we don't recognize, that are just ours. And that we tend to think that we deserve those things, or that they're just naturally ours. So, for example, if I was to move somewhere, I can be pretty sure in most neighborhoods that I will be accepted, and that people will not think, why did she move in here? Or our neighborhood is now going down the drain. I can shop almost anywhere and not have people follow me around, and not have people assume that I'm going to shoplift. I can turn on a television and see myself reflected on the TV, or open a newspaper and see myself reflected in the newspaper on the pages of a magazine. When I took my kids to school, I didn't have to explain my family. I didn't have to pretend to be a friend of the family so my children wouldn't suffer prejudice. And I didn't have to teach my kids about systemic racism so that they would be careful and they would watch out and make sure that they were safe. And I don't have to think about those things. I just have them. The reason I have them is because of the way our society is structured. So I want you to think a little bit about what kinds of privileges you have. I also want to point out that most of us live with both privileges and experience oppression at the same time. There are very few of us in this room that don't deal with some form of oppression as well. Sorry. So how does oppression work? These are just some of the ways that oppression is created and maintained. Exploitation. And I talked about exploitation before. Well, I'll go through these in more detail. Exploitation, marginalization, powerlessness, cultural imperialism, and violence. I see y'all busily writing away. We're going to go through these one by one. Exploitation is taking the resources, labor, self of others for your own gain. So, for example, one that you might all relate to is the student minimum wage. So students get paid less than other people. Why? Any idea? Yes.
The point is to encourage employers to hire students. At least theoretically.
Theoretically, yes. Yep. Yes, you. But if an adult comes in with no experience, they get paid more. Yep. Yes. Because they can. And yes, usually exploitation is dressed up in some other reason. Because you can't, and no politician can stand up and say, well, you know, I think we can exploit students because of ageism. Does everybody agree? Yes, let's do the minimum wage lower. So it's to give students experience. It's because students don't need the money as much. It's because they're less experienced. And quite often, those things aren't true. Yes? Well, you think that, For example, slavery exists in some parts of our world, like Western Europe, like Canada. That's when you take the whole self of someone for your own gain. Marginalization. What you do with marginalization is you tell people that they can't do particular things. They can't live in particular places. They can't have particular jobs. They can't be part of a particular kind of culture. You push them to the edges, and you justify it through oppression. So, for example, in Ancaster, there are very few second-level lodging homes. They fight every single one that tries to move up there. And it's not as if people don't need second-level lodging homes in Ancaster. So second-level lodging homes tend to be places where people live and have some support. And it tends to be people who have mental health issues, serious mental health issues, or are somewhat ill, but not ill enough that they have to go to a nursing home. And Ancaster just says they're not going to be here. And the kinds of justifications that they use for not having second-level lodging homes are things like they're not the kinds of places that you want in a family neighborhood. It'll bring down our property values. So inherent in those arguments is the idea that people who live in second-level lodging homes are somehow lesser, are somehow not allowed to be in Ancaster. That's marginalization. And I'll be talking more about these throughout the year, but I just want to give you an example of each. Powerlessness. I find this one somewhat difficult, but I think it's important to talk about. I've worked with a lot of people who have given up hope that their actions will create change for them. And they've given up hope because of their experiences with trying to create change. But I think it's touchy ground when you say that somebody is powerless, because they're not. And a lot of people that I have worked with are stronger and fight harder than anybody I know, even though they really don't feel that they can create change. They still fight. They still work hard to try and make change in their lives. But I think that society works against people when they try to create change. So I heard some people say, a socially just world can never happen. It'll just never happen. Or it's an ideal. We can't do that. And my question is, why? And if you say human nature, I want you to take a course in anthropology, please. And really look at what human nature is like. Or be a social worker for 2 years and really listen to the people that you work with. Somebody had a comment or a question? Nope, they changed their mind? So I think that although we work to make people feel powerless, and people often do, that doesn't mean that they don't have resources and they don't fight and they don't try to change things. The other thing that we use as societies is cultural imperialism. This is a map of the British Empire. And when I went to school, I was sort of raised with this map. That it was the empire in which the sun never set, because it stretched from side to side of the world. And I was taught that it was this wonderful, glorious thing. until I really started looking at history that wasn't just British history. Cultural imperialism is assuming that the way that you do things, that the way that your society works is the best way. That doesn't mean that some of the things in your society aren't the best. It's just assuming that everything you do is the best. And people also had comments about everybody having to be the same for social justice to happen. And I would disagree. I think what you need for social justice is respect. Is respect for the way that people live their lives. Is respect for lots of different ways of looking at things. But cultural imperialism is the direct opposite of that. The other pictures I was looking at for this were things like Hollywood, McDonald's, Coca-Cola, the things that have gone across the world. So people eat fast food instead of the foods that they would cook before the McDonald's showed up, and their nutrition goes down the tubes. I think one of the things that happens here in particular, one of my favorite things, is the defense of Christmas. I love Christmas. I think Christmas is fabulous. And I've never had anybody who doesn't celebrate Christmas insist that I get rid of Christmas. All they want is some space for their own celebrations, which seems perfectly reasonable to me. But when you start to talk about, you can't get rid of Christmas, Christmas is the best. Well, no, it's a holiday. It's a celebration of religious faith by a certain group of people. That's what it is. I know some of you are out there going, no, not Christmas. I'm not saying you can't celebrate Christmas. I'm just saying you can't tell everybody that Christmas is better than whatever they celebrate. That's cultural imperialism. And if nothing else works, violence. And this is a picture from the G20 protests in Toronto. So if you can't make people do what you want them to do, you run them over. And we're not looking at police officers who are standing toe-to-toe with black anarchists who are throwing bricks. We're looking at police officers running over people who are sitting peacefully in a circle, who just wouldn't move when they were told to move. So violence works very effectively. If you want to think of it at a more individual level, just think of the bullying that high school kids from the GBLTQ community suffer, and how hard some people work to make them fit into the box that they think they should be in. I think one of the things that we do is we tend to think of oppression as outside of ourselves, as this big behemoth thing that other people do, or that it is somehow out of our control. But oppression is embedded in personal relationships. And it's something that we recreate every day. In the way we act, in the things we buy, and the shows we watch. What's your favorite show? Now nobody wants to say, but what's your favorite show? 2.5 Men, what else? Glee, what else? Okay, one at a time, I can't hear you. Put your hands up. I'll take the first 5. Yes, at the back. Yep, you. Community. Okay, that's pretty funny, but sorry. Yep. How I Met Your Mother? Yep. The Mercer Report? Up there. Yep. The Big Bang Theory? How many of you watch Jersey Shore? Okay. I had to ask that question because I can't critique the shows that you mentioned because I watch all of them. So, and I think, one of the problems with analyzing the shows you watch for oppression means that you don't enjoy the shows that you watch anymore. So there are shows that I avoid doing that with. When my kids were growing up and watching music videos, they stopped watching them with me because I would be tearing them apart. But what's really funny is now they do that, so that's pretty cool. So let's get back to Jersey Shore. Easy target. But kidding aside, I want you to think about, why do you watch Jersey Shore? Those of you who watch it. And I'm sure there's more people who watch it who didn't want to admit it. Why do you watch Jersey Shore? Yep.
I think it's for the drama, you want to see what happens next. When you're like, oh my god, how's that going? What's the outcome of that?
Okay. So you want to, what she said is, you watch it for the drama, you want to see how the fights turn out. Yeah?
Because they're so socially inappropriate that we want to see how people react to them.
So they're really socially inappropriate. Do you think that allows you to feel superior to them?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. Yep, at the back.
I was just going to say it's a nice self-esteem boost.
It's a nice self-esteem boost. Yep. Okay, so you use it as a social measuring stick. What do you think watching Jersey Shore tells the people who sell you Jersey Shore? And you don't have to answer that. I just want you to think about that. I want you to think about that when you turn on the TV to watch a show. Why are you watching it? How does that relate to social structures and oppression? And what are you telling the people who are selling you that show? What are you saying is okay? What are you saying they should do more of? And that relates to the next thing. The personal is political, and the political is personal. Sorry. It's hard to cough and not make it sound terrible. So again, I want you to turn to the person next to you, or whoever you want to talk to, and I want you to talk about what in your life is political. Yes, I would agree. So what you said was your whole lifestyle and the choices that you make can either support oppression or challenge it and to create change. What did you have for breakfast this morning? How many people had cereal? Was it organic or non-organic? How many people had organic? How many people had cereal that was grown in Canada? How many people had cereal that was grown in Canada from genetically modified grains? Did you have milk on your cereal? Was the milk from a local organic farm or a factory farm? Even what you had for breakfast has been structured politically. And what you decided to have for breakfast is a political decision. That doesn't mean I want you all to go home and agonize over every decision. You'll go crazy. But I would like you to be more aware of the fact that your context is structured by politics, by oppression, and that your choices impact that structure. The personal is political, and the political is personal. So be careful what you eat for breakfast. So just a little bit more about how oppression works. And we'll certainly be talking about this in more detail as we go through the various isms. I think it's important also to understand that we'll be going through the various isms, but that we also tend to think of things like racism as something non-human, as something outside of us, as something we can't impact, and something that doesn't change. But racism, for example, I grew up in a very small town that was not diverse at all. And so, but I also grew up in a very racist home. But the jokes I heard, and I heard racist jokes every single day, were about French Canadians and Italians and Ukrainians. So things can change. I also think that definitions such as white can change. I have a friend who grew up in Ecuador, and she grew up in what I would say was the higher echelons of Ecuador. And in Ecuador, she was considered white. And then she came to Canada and had the shock of her life because she wasn't white anymore. She was now a woman of color. So definitions change. What racism looks like changes, but the process and the intention don't change. And what are some of the personal impacts of oppression? So think of something like identity and self-esteem. And I know that identity is a very complex concept, but just let's deal with it simply in here. Identity is who you think you are, and is linked with self-esteem in terms of how you feel about yourself and your ability to impact your life. And I think that oppression works very effectively to create negative identities for some people and positive identities for others. And if someone has a negative identity, they're much easier to exploit. If they don't feel like they can act upon their context, then they're more likely to fear powerlessness. Think about voice. Who gets to speak and who gets listened to? If you have a group of men and women together having a conversation, men talk twice as much as women. They're more likely to talk over women. They're more likely to set the topic of the conversation. And nobody really says anything about it. Pay attention the next time you have a conversation with the mixed group. And how many of you who are young women in the class were told at some point in your life to be a lady, to act like a lady? And what does that mean? So when people call me, I don't do it as much as I used to. I think I've just mellowed with age. But when people say lady, I say I'm not a lady. I don't want to be a lady, because what do ladies do? They sit down, shut up, and act pleasantly. They don't interrupt people. They don't yell. They don't take up space. Well, think about, next time you get on a bus, watch men and women on a bus. I usually do this gender, but I'll do it now. The men are on the bus like this. I'm feeling very comfortable here. And the women are on the bus like this. Probably with their legs crossed. Take up as little space as possible. Now, just be observant. And I think safety is a big issue. Where do you feel safe? When do you feel safe? Why? So, my neighborhood is considered an unsafe neighborhood. I've lived there for, I should always knock wood when I do this. I've lived there for almost 25 years. My kids grew up there. I have a dog, as you know. I forgot to put her picture into my, darn. I don't consider my neighborhood unsafe, but lots of people do. Why? I tell social work students that are going out on placement that they're probably safer in my neighborhood than they are in a neighborhood that they consider safe. And that's because of their prejudices. So if they were attacked in my neighborhood, they wouldn't go to anybody's door because they wouldn't think they'd get help, and they would. And they may go up to a neighborhood that they think is safe, and they won't pay attention, and therefore they'll be less safe. But there are particular social structures that identify my neighborhood as unsafe and somebody else's neighborhood as safe. And most of those issues are around class, frankly. We'll talk more about that. Thinking about societal impacts. Oppression dictates your access to justice, whether you get good representation, whether you'll be found guilty or not, the likelihood that you'll be found guilty, and how long your sentence will be. And we'll talk more about that as we talk about particularisms. Look at who holds positions of power in our society. And I asked when this was happening, and people were quite shocked at me, but I said, why is it a big deal that President Obama got elected? Why is that a big deal? It certainly is a big deal, but why? Freedom. Where you can go, when you can go there, whether you can gather with a group of people who are like you and feel safe, or feel that you might be attacked, whether you will be attacked. And I would say really freedom from harassment is a big one. And finally, in a big way, access to resources. Who gets the resources? Who finds it easy to find a house? Who doesn't? Who has enough food to eat tomorrow morning? Who gets to pick whatever kind of cereal they want, and who has to eat whatever the food bank gave them, or whatever they can afford? Who gets to sit in your seats? And this is just, we tend to talk about the different isms in isolation, but they don't act in isolation. And they impact and intersect with each other. So that if you are somebody who is poor and disabled, it's a lot more difficult than if you're somebody who has a lot of money and has a disability. So not only do they intersect, but they change the nature of how they're expressed. You get it, right, with the colors and how it changes the colors? It's pretty clever, don't you think? No? Do you know how long it took me to find that picture? So why is this important for social work? Well, I argue that not only is it important because social justice is a central value in social work, but that understanding oppression is essential to effective practice, to doing a good job as a social worker. It means that you make more accurate assessments. Oppression encourages us to blame individuals for their problems. And sometimes people make bad individual choices, but if you only look at their individual choice, if you only look at their personal issues and not the context that they're in, you are not going to make an accurate assessment of their problem, of what they're dealing with. It leads to real relationship building, because you know what? I do not want to work with somebody who I think feels superior to me. I do not want to work with somebody who has no idea of what my life is like. I want somebody who's going to respect me, try to have some understanding of who I am and where I come from, and someone who's going to treat me as an equal. It allows for much more realistic and effective plans for change. One of the things that really annoys me is the way that we deal with drug addiction issues. People get addicted to drugs and alcohol for reasons, and those reasons don't go away when they become clean and sober. The reasons are still there, and we often don't address those. We just say, you're bad if you're addicted, go get cleaned up, and once you're cleaned up, you're fine. And that's not effective practice. And I think that working for social justice and looking at social justice issues means that you work on a larger scale, and that a larger scale of social work at the community or at the social policy level or at the global level can be much more effective. Okay, so it's 3 minutes to tutorial time. These are the various tutorials and where they are. I will post this on Avenue to Learn. I really need the picture of the dog, don't I? Okay, there's no picture of a dog yet. Please wait and stop rustling your papers so people can hear. I'll wait till you stop. I'm going to hire you. You can sit at the front and just go shh. Okay, people, I'm waiting. This will be posted on Avenue to Learn. What's up here are the email addresses of your TAs and myself. Please don't use Avenue to Learn. I don't check it. And it's very hard to reply to you. The office hours, I can always stop again, people. Just be patient for 1 minute. The office hours are up here as well. If you can't make the office hours for your TA, you may go and speak to another TA. Okay? You're always welcome to come to my office hours as well. Consider this a picture of the dog. See you next week. Except for those people who are in my tutorial, who I will see in 10 minutes.